Good afternoon, everyone. Maybe even good morning for people like me in the in this time zone. Hello and welcome to our third and final day of the Global Inclusive Education Virtual Summer Camp 2022. We have a lot packed in for you over the next few hours, including keynote speeches around the theme of implementing inclusive education using the multidisciplinary approach with a special focus on schools in Africa with limited resources. Now, before I hand it over to our very capable moderator, I would like to give mention to a few exciting events taking place during today's seminar. Today is the official launch of the African Understanding Dyslexia Training Program, hosted by the Cadet Academy and in partnership with Nessie Learning, which you just watched a video on. Directly after today's panel discussion, we will feature the awards for celebrating parents' advocacy and inclusive education in Africa to parents, teachers, teaching aides, and to schools. So, without further ado, let's get started. Please help me to give a very warm welcome to an amazing mother and a very proactive advocate, our moderator, Didi Idang.
Hi, Susie. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. Thank you so much, Susie, for a very heartwarming welcome. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. If you're reaching us, if you're on the same time zone, like Susie said, if you're on this time zone, good afternoon to you. Good morning, good evening from wherever you're joining us. So today we're going to be having an amazing time and I'm super happy to be here. We actually saved the best for the last, and today we have lots and lots and lots of speakers who will be doing justice to our sub-theme of the Global Inclusive Education Summit. So may I, on behalf of the Cadet Academy and the management team and everyone at the back end, welcome you once again. And let's just talk a little bit about what we, the focus, the sub-theme of this summit. The focus really today is going to be on the out-of-school children in Nigeria. And, we have some very disturbing figures, which really gives the basis for which this discussion is very important in a day like this. Now, Nigeria has about 11 million out-of-school children. That's really a lot. Now, these are the neglected children amidst other children that are also neglected. We look at children with disabilities, we look at children with special needs, and all the ones we have discussed over the past few days. But how about these other children who for no reason or no fault of theirs are out of school? So this is going to be the crux of our discussion today. And I'm so happy to be welcoming our first speaker. We would, if you look through your agenda, we should be having Professor Sigamoni Maker, but he is not here yet. So I think it would be nice for us to go ahead and speak to Professor Ibrahim. Professor Ibrahim is here.
Hello.
Yes, yes. Okay, sir. So because we don't have the first speaker here, please, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our next speaker, who is going to be Professor Ibrahim Umara. He's a professor of international relations and strategic studies, former head department of political science, coordinator peace building, conflict management and development studies at the Center for Peace, Diplomatic and Development Studies, University of Maiduguri. He's currently the vice chairman, high power on Sangaya reform in Borno State. What a huge, huge, huge profile there, sir. He'll be speaking to us today on the topic. Professor Ibrahim is going to be speaking to us. Oh, sorry. Yes, he's going to be speaking to us on the topic, identifying the extent of exclusion in Nigerian schools and addressing the barriers to further inclusion. Sir, you have the floor now.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. To identify the extent of exclusion in Nigeria is much more multi-sectoral, multi-dimensional within the context of the historical antecedents of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The country, as you know, is divided into northern and southern region. And as we are talking about Western education, those in the southern part were having the advantage of having the early Western education. And for us in northern Nigeria, we already had an Islamic education that was much more established for more than 1,200 years before the arrival of the Western colonialists to formally introduce the Western system of education. So the exclusion within the country differs between the southern and the northern axis of the country. So the number of people that people are ascribing as out of children are preponderantly resident within northern part of the country than with the southern. But even in the southern part of the country, you have very huge number of out of school children, particularly the female children, the male and the female also. So now, the factors that led to the exclusion is connected to the anticipated benefit accruable from the attendance or from accrual from what they intend to benefit from being in the Western system of education. So the exclusionary aspect was first addressed particularly in terms of what I call conscription of people to be registered into the primary school by the colonial administration using the indirect system, directing the native authority, meaning the traditional institution, to be liaising with the communities, for the communities to mobilize the school-age children for them to be enrolled. That was in the first stage. And in the second stage, the people who considered Western education as having a separate agenda because of the instrument or the avenue within which the Western education was introduced to, that negate the principles of what they already knew from the Islamic system, make the people much more skeptical of the Western education, and they started to jealously protect and guard their children from being enrolled into the Western educational system because of the deeply rooted animosities of colonial encroachment and the subsequent emasculation of the traditional institution that serve as what I call instrument for the proliferation of the Sangaya, which is the Islamic or the Quranic system of education. Later, after 20, 30 years, people realized the benefit and the importance, of course, because the colonialists introduced an educational system within which, unless you go through it, you will never be conscripted or you'll never be employed to serve in the public sector or even in the private sector because they have separate alphabet, separate methods, separate techniques, and separate language. So the products of the Sangaya happen to be not relevant to the relevance of the modernizing Nigeria. And that was how the huge number of people who were not opportune to be in the Western system of education happen to feel somehow dislocated, happen to be sidelined. They feel a sort of not being carried along in the proper socio-economic emancipation of the ordinary citizen. So in the late 80s to 90s, the structural adjustment policies and the inability of the government to really shoulder education as they ought to, because they consider education as a burdensome. Most of the policies that were made in order to lure in parents and the pupils to be registered into the school were sidelined as a result of budgetary constraint, which led to the proliferation of the private schools. And, the issues of people, motives of being selfish, highly interested, they had a sort of system of segregation. Segregation within the context of those who have the means will take their children to the private primary schools, will have better access to education. Those that were left from within the public sector were allowed to follow with be low moral, low pay, substandard outcome of whatever impact of knowledge that they're supposed to have. But even with that, most of the structures built by the government far, far outweigh what you can consider as a private educational institution, both at the primary, secondary, and even in the advanced level. But in spite of that, the private sector seemed to attract, thereby excluding huge number of young children from having access to better education. And that exclusion revolved around those that were already registered into the school system. But you have a huge number of children that were not privileged, not opportune to be registered into the school system. For example, I will tell you example from my own experience. I'm an Islamic scholar, the head of Sangaya. Sangaya is an Al-Majid school, which many people in the international parents call out of school children because they were not ready for certification. And the school was an institution before. We produced manpower. Those manpower served in the judiciary, served in the civil service before the advent of colonization, when we had very strong traditional institutions. As I already mentioned, that with the encroachment of colonialization and the subsequent emasculation of the traditional institutions, these Sangha institutions become no longer sensitive to the sensibilities of modernizing the civil service structure, and therefore they were completely sidelined. But even with them, the government felt that since it is a religious institution, it is not supposed to be carried along by creating a sort of what you call integrated learning system in order to create an avenue for those that are reading in the Sangaya schools to be incorporated to read alongside their contemporaries in the Western model of education. And what again happened was the nature of the registration of these children into these schools were purely based on trusts. And the mandate that will be given to the Sangaya teachers by the parents. This is a child that we brought to you as a trust. Teach him how to read the Quran, make him memorize the Holy Quran, and so that you and I, or you and us, will be proud of preaching the apex of committing the Quran into memory. And therefore, the teacher of the Sangaya, the trustee, is now substituting the parents by becoming surrogate parents, or you call it, they assume the guardianship of the children that were entrusted into the particular Sangaya school. So even if some tend to be liberally minded to allow those pupils and the students registered in their Sangaya to be registered also in the contemporary primary schools, it has to seek for a clearance from the parents that we have a primary school nearby, and many children are going to this primary school. Of course, the government will provide for the uniform, the government will provide for the exercise book and the pencil, and there is no much registration, we can cater for that. Some parents will go ahead, and some parents will say, no, the contract is for you to teach him Quran and only Quran. Any attempt to subvert the purpose of taking this child into your custody tantamount to betrayal of trust. And as a result of that, we remain powerless to take these people into primary school. For instance, when you come to Maiduguri, northeastern Nigeria, the Borno State capital, we have a very huge Sangaya school. The number of pupils in this Sangaya school reciting the Holy Quran is 3 times more than the number of pupils registered in Western model primary schools. And in every primary school, you will see within the vicinity of the school, you have 10 to 15 Sangaya schools surrounding the primary school. And out of that, not more than 40% were from the Sangaya. And it is only after primary school that they will come and continue with the afternoon session in the Sangaya school, and they continue with the night session in the Sangaya. The experience that I had, as I said, was our father did not register us into the primary school. It was our elder brother who decided, look, the system is changing, the world is modernizing. I will take these children to the primary school since it is just a stone throw. My father said, yes, knowledge belongs to God, and nobody has exclusive money for their knowledge. But even if you register, they make sure they continue with the recitation of the Holy Quran until they become masters of it. And that was what our father decided alongside our elder brother, and approved our registration into the primary school in Maiduguri in 1978. So I was opportune. Our house was in Sangaya, and then the primary school was in the neighborhood. So the system of what you call exclusion at that time wasn't exaggerated as it was exaggerated in the ongoing situation. Because even at that time, the nature of timing of school system in the Sangaya was divided along the boarding students and the day students. So for us, the boarding students, we will be asked to commence a session of recitation of the Holy Quran around 4 a.m. We'll be reciting and reciting and reciting until 5 a.m. to make morning prayers. After morning prayers, we continue the recitation up to 6:30. By 6:30, we'll be directed that those of you that are going to primary school, round up, go and wear your uniform and go. So it was from there that we will go to the primary school. We participate in all other activities within the primary school, beginning from the sweeping of the environment, cleaning our classes, participating in assembly, and all the routines that you already know. We'll only come back around 9 a.m. for breakfast. Then we still go back around 10. We come back home around 11:15 for a short break. Then we go back until after school. So when we come back home for after school to house, the afternoon session of Sangaya commences by 2 in the afternoon. So 2 up to 5 p.m., we are already in the Sangaya school. Nobody deprived us. We only lost the morning session. Now, in the night, we also have session, which commences from 7 p.m. up to 9:30, 10 p.m. before we go to bed. Other days, like Saturdays and the Sundays, where there are no primary schools for us to go, we will now attend the morning session from 4 a.m. up to 9:30, 10:30 a.m. Then after 10:30 a.m., it is from there that we go out to marketplace, to hotels, and other scavenge foods that are remnant for us to eat for our breakfast. The remaining one will come with it to Sangaya, because there is no institution that is supporting the Sangaya in terms of taking care of our breakfast, in terms of taking care of our lunch, in terms of taking care of our dinner. So we are fending for ourselves if the Sangaya cannot fend for. And if, on the other hand, the Sangaya will fend for the pupils and the students, these pupils and the students will be taken to the farmland for them to cultivate what they are going to consume. That was in late 1970s up to late 1980s. So we finished primary school in 1983. We continued with the recitation of the Holy Quran until when we got our admission into secondary school. I went to Borno Teachers College in 1984, February precisely, up to 1989. So the moment we were transferred out of Maiduguri to Ngamdu, 100 kilometers away from Maiduguri, during school session, we were no longer Almajiri. We were already a full-time boarding student in a very good, well-built, well-structured school with breakfast, with lunch, and with dinner, with all the facilities that were required. But even as a boarding student, on Saturdays and Sundays, we go into the Ngamdu town proper to interact with our fellow Almajiris, and we continue to engage in a sort of like rehearsals in order not to be left behind, because we are already competing. So we finish our secondary school without missing the Sangaya system. the same thing university, that was how we coach. And right now, as I'm talking to you, I am the head of the center. I have more than 400 students with me. Some are boarding, some are already day students. But then the scenario where I found myself changed much more than what I am experiencing as the head of the Sangha that I inherited from my father. The changes revolve around the socio-economic circumstances distorted by the ongoing insecurity. If people said out of school children, particularly in relation to Northern Nigeria, justice are not done. People don't do their homework properly to ascertain the real Almajiri from the street children. Average people who may be conducting researches, including my fellow academics in the universities and other international organizations, both NGOs and non-NGOs, non-governmental organizations, they conduct research in biases by not specifically identifying the Almajiri from the non-Almajiri. And when this challenge was not given adequate attention, they are using all out-of-school children indiscriminately as Almajiris. I now took the challenge to conduct a research on my own to identify. In fact, I do challenge Nigeria National Television Authority, the network service, and some of the media outlets that I would like you to take your camera, go to the main street, and interview these children if they were Almajiris. You'll now find out that they were not Almajiris. Almajiris have very much structured timetable. In fact, the Western educational system copied from the system of education that they made in Borno because it was entrenched, it was institutionalized. And what I want to tell the audience is Islam was in Borno when the Prophet of Islam was in Mecca before his migration to Medina. And the structural institutionalization of the timetable was made by the second Caliph of Islam, Umar bin al-Khattab. And there was a letter that was written by Caliph Umar, the second Caliph of Islam, to Borno. And we were using that timetable up to now because the Sangha system in Borno, which we inherited, was having a school session from 4 a.m. in the morning up to 9:30, 10 a.m. Then there, between 10 to 1, we have opportunities for us to improve our writing skills in Arabic numerals, Arabic alphabet, Arabic calligraphy. Because as we are writing the tablet that is called Allah, we are also committing the Quran into memory, printing it from our brain. You are writing, you are reading as you are writing. After writing, you cross-check for mistakes. After checking for mistakes, then you now continue to recite. And you are reciting 300 times, 400 times. So within the span of 2 to 3 days, you see you are almost through with over 50 to 60 verses. And in a short span of time, you commit the Quran into memory. And you remember again that in the entire system of the Quranic curriculum in the world, when you go to your Google, it will tell you that in the whole world, we have only 3 models of reciting the Quran. The Borno model, which is the one that we already inherited from our great-grandparents, and then the Turkish model, and then the Senegalese model. You know, Senegal was our student. Most of the teachers who taught, who propagated Islam, who were the scholars of Islam, migrated from Borno as a missionary to establish Islamic schools. So all this money that you often hear, they were from Borno. And their model also, even though it was a francophone, and as a result of colonial differences, the models of Senegal tend to slightly differ with the model that we have in Borno. So for Borno model, is only Quran, for you to appreciate the alphabet, for you to pronounce word formation, for you to start recitation. And only Quran, only Quran. Nobody is interested in understanding the meaning of these verses. What we are interested about is only for you to commit the Quran into memory. So all other jurisprudential aspects of the Quran, such as the areas of jurisprudence of Hadith, of Tawheed, of Fiqh, will be a later, it's an advanced stage. But at the primary level, at least for the first 15 years, people must commit the Quran into memory. for the one in Turkey, Turkish model was for them to engage in word formation, recite the Holy Quran, understand the meaning and the translation. So they don't care about memorizing it. So those who consider memorizing it will also go to special school. For Senegal, their model was for them to appreciate from first to 20th juz, and then from there, they now go to other areas of Islamic jurisprudence. So these are the three international models of reciting Holy Quran that we have. So for that of Borno, as in the letter of the second Caliph of Islam, we start our session on Friday afternoon after Friday congregation. That will be the inset of our weekend, like our Monday today in the Western world. After Friday afternoon, you start afternoon session by Friday. You also have night session on Friday. Saturday, we have morning session commencing from 4 a.m. up to 10. We have afternoon session commencing from 2 up to 5 p.m. Then we have night session commencing from 7 p.m. up to 9:30, 10 p.m. before we go to bed. So this continues up to Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. By Wednesday, we only have afternoon session. After closing at the afternoon session of Wednesday, those boarding in the nearby communities will now go and see their parents. They will spend the night with their parents. Throughout Thursday, we don't have school session. On Thursday morning, afternoon, and night, we'll be with our parents. And then by Friday morning, we'll now be asked to come back to the Sangaya. And then we'll go and participate in the Friday congregation. After Friday congregation, you now directly come into the Sangaya institution for you to commence the activities. The pupils and the students in the Sangaya were in actual custody of the teacher. The teacher is the mother, the teacher is the father, the teacher is the guardian, and everything. Anything pertaining this pupil or student is the pure responsibility of the teacher. No more, no less. And when Western education was about to be promoted, the factor that led to the exclusion now is our parents consider Western education as a counterweight, because if you are an Islamic scholar, you have already institutionalized yourself. You are an advisor to the traditional institution. You are just a leader on your own right. And if you say, we are going to register these kids into primary school, it is like snatching away some parts of their prestige, some parts of the status endowed on them. So they see it as an opposition, as a counterweight to their own influence. So they use their position in the society in order to degrade the Western education by saying that it comes from the West and mostly is from missionary, and they will go into a school system within which they will never even conform with their culture, with your tradition. They will adapt Western educational system, Western value, and Western tradition. And this is the deeply rooted animosity against Western education, activated by the founders of the ongoing, quote unquote, the so-called Boko Haram. No, our parents did not recognize Western education as it is seen purely as Westernization. It is seen as a challenge to the entrenched civilization emanating from the Quranic education. It is now seen as iconoclastic, and many people listen to them. And in fact, before our time, in the late 1940s, people migrate from a community where the traditional rulers were insisting that their children must be registered to primary school. Just for them to register is better for them to migrate. They are migrating out. So they really knew the history. When you come and say, look, Western education, they have facilities, they have classroom, they have toilet facilities, they were taught by teachers, well paid by government, and after successive completion, they were the only ones that will be recruited to serve in the public and the private sector. Should there be any intervention by whether the United Nations agencies or other non-governmental organizations, they will only consider those who can read and write in English. So those of you who did not go to that, you are left away. So that animosity is still there, and we feel that these people are neglected. And to the real scenario and the real situation that we are, that was exactly how it was. And since the unfortunate incident of the ongoing insecurity in Northeast, particularly Borno State, you know, the model that Borno used of only committing the Quran to memory without understanding the meaning and the contextual text and the translation of the Holy Quran led to the manipulation of disenchanted youth by the so-called semi-scholar who wanted to interpret Islam upside down, an anti-establishment scholar who was even struggling to make himself relevant. And unfortunately, you know, people associated Boko Haram with Al-Majrism simply because the fundamental strategy that he used was the substantial number of Al-Majris that have graduated from these Sangaya schools were not employable because they cannot read and write, they cannot communicate, they don't have any certificate to be presented for them to be considered for employment anywhere. So they opted to hawking. Most of the market people that engage in commercial activities, you see them, they were graduates of these Sangaya schools. And those people that came diluted their mind that, look, you are a citizen, you have equal rights with those that have attended Western education. Come to me, we are going to change the system, that we're going to empower you. And once you are empowered, the national care will be shared equally with you. And as a result, you know, and then he kept some what you call seductive incentives, because those products of Sangaya could not afford to get even 100 naira. You know, what he came was to identify and we call it demarcate Sangayas, including my own and the other Sangayas, and they identify people who are about to commit the Quran into memory. That, look, you can come, when you come here, you recite the Holy Quran for 30 minutes, we'll give you 500. So that was how they started luring, attracting people because of the material inducement, material attraction. And then some people who were adamant not to join them later were people who were seduced to join them by supplying commercial motorcycle. And we have Volkswagen Golf car, which was then used as a commercial car within Maiduguri, were given out to them in exchange for joining them. And for those that were already in the marketplace, you know, most of them were Al-Majri, whose investment had shrunk, need assistance in order to rejuvenate their commercial activities. They were given investment in tune of about 150,000, 200,000, depending on the personality of the individual. So these activities that the founder of Boko Haram did had really set a trap to entrap those excluded in the system. And when they triggered, many people were caught up in a crossfire, and gradually, you know, they were saying that the state is the enemy, you know, the soldiers were behaving like an invading forces, of course. In a situation where military were deployed in order to engage in a patrol, and some people, ragtag individuals, will just take cover in a crowded area for them to fire on the soldiers will automatically fire back from the direction of the fire. And that was how the conflict conflagrated entire metropolitan. And then gradually people decided to mobilize themselves, and then they pushed those elements out. They later regroup outside the local government areas. They grow like a gargantuan, they extend their tentacle, clinching. And then, in fact, out of the 27 local governments in Borno, I think only 6 or 7 that did not fall to Boko Haram. All others were already controlled by Boko Haram. So now, what I am saying is, exclusion was divided into first phase, second phase. Now I am coming into the third phase. So with the Boko Haram insurgency, you know, peoples were displaced, communities were displaced. So in rural areas, we do have Sangayas, and they were more in rural areas than even in the city. And most of these displaced people, they were forcibly displaced because they did not come with anything. They came with their barefooted hand, and even some do not have clothes, trekking hundreds of miles to the relatively safer area. And the Borno State government had a record of 72,000 unaccompanied children. That is the dossier that Borno State government, only Borno State. More than 70,000 children of school age that were unaccompanied as a result of displacement of their communities. This is in addition to the Sangaya system that were not displaced within Maiduguri metropolitan and Jere that surround established primary schools. So when there was a primary school session, those that were registered to primary school were already in the primary school, but the Almajiris are also in their school side by side with the primary school. They were not inside the building. They were either opposite or adjacent. And sometime in the afternoon when there is no school session, they were right inside the primary school because the primary school have a very big tree and is having very foliage shades that attract people to be there. And it's relatively quieter. So those people that are going to school are called Kiskari. When we say Kiskari in Kanuri, meaning those that have developed into like a secondary school stage, they can be taken out of the Saga institution in order to contain any disturbance that is coming from the recitation of the Holy Quran. So that's why we are taking them out to Kiskari. And we are dividing them into group of 10, 10, 10, 10. Each is assigned with another student who mastered the Quran more than them. So he listens as they are reading, and if they make a mistake, he is correcting them. He's just like serving as a monitor or head boy, who is also in turn closely supervised by the chief teacher, and those that I said registered by the government, which is over 70,000. This is only with the government. But I will tell you that the number of unregistered, unaccompanied children is more than the 70,000 that is with the dossier of the government. Where are they ended up? Usually children, when they come into settlement, they identify themselves with their fellow children. And the Sangaya school do not ask any question. If a Sangaya pupil or Almajiri leave the Almajiri in search of food to either marketplace or any nearby restaurant, they will meet fellow young chap, and then they now interact and discuss, where are you? I have nowhere. We were displaced. I never know where my parents are. Shall I follow you? Yes, we are with the Sangaya. Can you follow us to our Sangaya? Then early in the morning when you come out, you see strange faces. When you ask them, they say, we are from communities also. And you know that the community is already displaced. So they melt in with the non-Sangaya pupils in our schools. So those that are already in the Sangaya, observed by the Sangaya schools, are more than the number registered by the government, which the government had already built infrastructures for them. Schools, hostel, hiring teachers. We are grateful, very grateful for UNICEF. We are grateful for European Union. We are grateful for the government of Japan, the United States of America, Canada, Norway. All, in fact, we are indebted. We never knew that humanity is a family. The notion of understanding, of suspecting Europeans had completely changed. Without them, we definitely will be destitute. Without them, we cannot fend and cater for these children and their families. Without them, we'll never have internally displaced camp, both in the officially designated IDP camp as well as in the host communities. All this were made possible by European Union, by the Americans, by the Canadians, by Norway, Norwegian Refugee Council, by United Nations specialized agencies, and all other non-governmental organizations. In fact, we are very much grateful for them. Now, again, another set of the out of school or of the exclusion that I want to draw your attention to. The third one that I already said were the unaccompanied children. The fourth is even the accompanied children, the children who escape their communities alongside their parents. A parent in displacement cannot fend for his family. Save the children, United Nations Development Program, Norwegian Refugee Council, and other specialized agencies of the United Nations have been feeding them, have been engaged in humanitarian activities, but it's not enough. So those people must go out to fend for themselves. And in the process, the children that they have is like becoming a burden on them. So the other option they have is for them to use these children to go and search for means of livelihood by complementing the role of their fathers. That now added to the number of Almajiri, which people misunderstood properly. They are called street children. These are children of the displaced people. They and their parents are already displaced. They were in the street without shoe, around major junctions, in major motor parks and major strategic places. You see them begging. They are doing that in order to complement how to feed and cater for their own family. This is in addition to the already existing one as a result of the urbanization. That was the fourth. And then the fifth level of exclusionness. As I already told you the history of Borno, that even the Hausa states in northern Nigeria, they now consider Borno as their teacher. They were the ones that were coming all away from Sokoto, from Funtua, from Dusema, from Kazode, from all Hausa land. They were coming to Borno because even the Hausa people knew that no matter how scholarly you become in terms of Holy Quran, if you didn't go to Borno, you are not yet a true scholar. They already acknowledge that and they know that. I have my colleagues whom we read when my father was alive. They came all away from Bebeji, from Yerbarza, from Kazore, from Bumen. Do you know that these people were well-established people? They were very successful business people. But up to now, they have been sending their children to our house for them to continue. The reason is, this is where they had their Quranic education, and this is a place that will best give their own children the Quranic education. Up to now, the linkage was maintained. 1. 2, apart from those who are having genuine reason to send their children to study Holy Quran to Borno from the Hausa land, there were people who I will term as human traffickers. They were not in any way associated with the Sangaya. They knew the people in Hausa land have a very huge respect to Borno because of Islamic scholarship. They now go to these parents as a tout that I have school in Maiduguri. You can give out your children for them to read the Holy Quran. In less than 9 months, 9 years, these children will commit Quran to memory. Trust your children to us. Unknowingly, the parents will fall a trap. And these people will come with these kids to Maiduguri. And the kids will not be registered in any of the Sangaya schools. They had their collaborators. And the collaborators will assume the role of teaching these children the Quranic education. They will start their morning session only around 4 a.m. and they will finish by 5 a.m., only an hour. And the teacher who hosts them will now tax each pupil. Previously, it started from 20 naira. It graduated into 50, into 100. Now it's 200 naira, some of the schools that I know. By 5 a.m. after morning prayer, early morning prayer, those who brought them have already taxed them that whatever you will do, you make sure you return to the afternoon session with 200 naira. The more number of almajiris you have, the more return. Wow. If you make a simple calculation, simple arithmetic, that if you have 40 pupils and you are having a return of 200 naira times 40, that serves as an income, which is going to be shared by the tout that has been in the house allowed to bring them down. So now that also make it a form of commercialized instrumentalization of these kids as a means of generating income. Yeah. This is what you call the Almajiri commercial venture. And the last one.
Prof, so this is actually the last one now. This is actually the last. So that we can.
The last one, which is very interesting, which people don't know, is, toward the wave of the coronavirus, the Almajiris were identified as vectors of the virus because they moved from one place to another. And most of the northern governors decided to expel them from their states to their places of origin. And in some states like Taraba, they were outrightly rejected. And Borno, being the custodian of these Almajiris, opened up its doors to those people. But unfortunately, those people that were coming to Borno, they were not Almajiris. They were not Almajiris. They were children produced by their parents, and their parents do not want to take their responsibilities. And even when I was called by the Sultan to Kaduna to deliver a Ramadan lecture, the Sultan is the supreme leader of the Muslims in Nigeria. I told them, sir, nowadays you don't need people to travel from one state to another in search of Quranic knowledge. Every state, including Port Harcourt, they have Islamic scholars. Make a system to ensure parents take responsibilities of their children and give the necessary education to their children from within their own communities. So this is what I want to observe. So now,
thank you very much.
In summary, the dichotomy is, one, you have a problem of identifying the true Almajiri with the street children. Two, you have the problem of insecurity-induced inflow of children. And then three, as a result of insecurity, most of the educational infrastructures were completely destroyed and there are no instances. And then four, because of the loss of hope, many people do not see registering their children into the school system will yield positive results. So these are factors that led to the exclusion. Now, what are ways of inclusion?
Yeah.
Just give me 2 minutes.
So Prof, I know that in the Q&A, there are going to be a lot of questions that may provoke more thoughts on this. But so that we don't take, because we have eaten so much time into the next one. And I also got carried away because this is something that interests me, not only as a Nigerian, but this is really eye-opening, all the facts that you had to put here. I lost count of my own time. So please, so we don't leave other guests who are also waiting to deliver their lecture.
It's all right. It's all right.
Put this on hold and we'll come back to you during the Q&A. So yes, thank you very much, Prof. Ibrahim, for that wonderful presentation. We're just going to go straight. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's do it this way. Let's have the next speaker speak to us, and then afterwards we can now have the Q&A. So instead of us going directly into the Q&A, let's have the next speaker speak to us for 20 minutes. 20 minutes, after which we'll go ahead and then do the question and answer. So please keep your questions, don't lose them, please, so we can have that later.
Okay.
So at this point, this should have been our first speaker, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, he wasn't able to join us at the very beginning. We're going to be listening to Professor Sigamoni. He's going to be speaking to us on the practical steps for responding to the diverse needs of out-of-school children in view of the SDG, which aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and lifelong learning opportunities for all. For those of you who will be wondering who is Prof. Sigamoni, what is he going to be speaking? We have made all the profile of our speakers available on this particular website, the website of the Global Inclusive Education. So you can actually check them out if you need to have more information. But I just want you to know at this point that Professor Sigamoni is an extraordinary professor at the University of Western Cape in Cape Town, South Africa. That's the much I'm going to expose now. So I'll just hand over the floor to Prof. So Prof, you have the floor now.
Thank you very much. You can hear me, right?
Oh, yes, sure. Loud and clear.
So thank you, Didi, and thank you to Lola for inviting me. I must say before I start that Professor Umara, I'd like to have another conversation with you at some stage. You make a lot of sense and we can talk further, but you know, I was asked to speak on the practical steps for responding to the diverse needs of out-of-school children. But I've chosen to look at structural issues and philosophical issues and issues that create the conditions for this marginalization. So, I'm a South African, and, we've done a lot of work. I worked in the National Ministry as well, in inclusive education. And so we produced a white paper, and we tried to implement inclusive education in South Africa. And what I've done over the last few decades is I've tried to understand why so many working class children don't succeed in the education system. So, Professor Umara, you'll be interested in this discussion, and I want to have a dialogue with you at some stage about what you say as well. So given my history and my understandings of why poor children fail in the schooling system, I tried to look at what happens elsewhere in the world. Unfortunately, I didn't look at Nigeria, but I did look at the United Kingdom, and I looked at the United States, and I tried to understand why poor children fail. So, a long time ago, I think in the 19th century, John Dewey, who everybody knows, very familiar with his commitment to education. And he said this, he said, it's the office of the school environment to see to it that each individual gets an opportunity to escape from the limitations of the social group in which he or she was born and come into living contact with a broader environment. So in other words, you're talking about social mobility and children using education as a platform to succeed. And my view is that he underestimated the economic system and that his vision was too ambitious, because so many children actually fail in the system, fail in the education system. And education hasn't yielded the desired results. So I look at the United States, and Bowles and Ginters had this to say. They had this to say in 1976. You must remember that the American education system is quite old. And he said that a revolutionary transformation of social life will not simply happen through piecemeal change. Rather, we believe it will occur only as a result of a prolonged struggle based on hope and a total vision of a qualitatively new society waged by those social classes and groups which stand to benefit from the new era. This they said in 1976. So in other words, many poor children in the United States are not succeeding as well. So when we talk about inclusive education in various countries in glowing terms, nobody speaks about the inequality which gives rise to large numbers of children failing. And in South Africa, we know that race and class is an issue, but race and class is a universal challenge. So I tried to look at the British system, and I looked at what their key sociologists are saying. So I looked at Diane Ray, I looked at Paul Willis, I looked at Marsden and Jackson, as well as Stephen Ball. And so because of my experiences in South Africa, I decided that we need to develop a planning tool for the education, for education in countries where there are many vulnerable children. And so in trying to develop this planning tool, I thought I need, as I mentioned earlier, that I need to look at the international environment. And as a result, I looked at the history of the class debate and education. So what's my research problem? My research problem is the same as those that was posed by Marsden and Jackson in Education Working Class, a very good book that they've written, where they inquire, why is it so relatively few working class children succeed in the education system? And so our problem in South Africa is that our minister says that the only way South Africa is going to achieve meaningful social and economic transformation is by making sure that children across all of society, especially in poor communities, learn to read, write, and do mathematics in the early grades, so they are equipped to go on to further educational opportunities. So I thought this was a very useful point of departure for engaging with you, since research suggests that the British and the Americans have failed, have struggled with the problem for the last 150, 200 years. And there's been a lot of sociological analysis. But this sociological analysis has not led to practical solutions concerning the problems. So I mentioned to you the motivation of my study was to develop an educational planning tool. And that I looked at this international literature. And this is what Marsden and Jackson says on education. They wrote a book called The Education of the Working Class. They explain the way in which education continues to fail unacceptably large numbers of working class children in Britain. It points conclusively, as other studies have, to the loss and the wastage of ability under the education system. The problems of mass participation in the education system and the debilitating effects for some children of economic and material deprivation. And there's a tight bond between educational attainment and social class. The difficulties that working class parents experience in assessing information about their children's schooling and a number of other issues relating to alienation and marginalization. What does Diane Ray say? She wrote a book called Miseducation, Inequality, Education in the Working Class. Education policy is based on false assumptions about human nature, with greed and self-interest taken to be the only reliable attributes. Education has not been set up to compensate for social and economic inequalities. Social justice and equality are too far down the priority list. The function of schooling is to preserve the class and select the elite. What does Stephen Ball say? He says, as far as the social inequality in Britain is concerned, education policy does not work or is not working well. All problems are still there. Gone are the days when radical thinkers naively thought there could be progressive advance to the reform of the education system. Education has become a major political issue, a major focus of media attention. The effects and implication of this policy speak are crucial to understanding of contemporary national education policies. Government has been seen as tackling the problems and transforming the systems. Education has become a political football. So what does Bowles and Ginter says? I mentioned him earlier. He says, the disappointing results of the war on poverty and in larger sense, the persistence of poverty and discrimination in the United States have decisively discredited liberal social policy. The poor are at the wrong end of the education system and hardly benefit from the programs that are being offered. So Bowles and Ginter is a very good read. It's a very useful book. But I think another study by Paul Willis on learning to labor about the United Kingdom said that one of Willis's most important findings was that the lads were completely uninterested in school. Their approach to school was to survive it, to do as little work as possible, and to have as much fun as possible by pushing the boundaries of the authority and as bunking as much as they could. The reason they didn't value education is because they anticipated getting factory jobs which didn't require any formal qualifications. They saw school as a bit sissy for middle-class kids. So what does Pierre Bourdieu say? I think Pierre Bourdieu says the most important thing. He's argued that the children of the middle class or wealthier parents are likely to have cultural assets, knowledge, behavior, attitudes, and cultural experiences that ensures they succeed in education. Pierre Bourdieu developed the cultural deprivation theory. This theory implies that higher class cultures are better when compared to working class cultures. Because of this perceived superiority, people from the upper and middle classes believe people who are working class are themselves to blame for the failure of their children in education. Bourdieu argues that the working class failure in schools, if measured by exam success, is a fault of the education system, not the working class children. The major role of the education system, according to Bourdieu, is cultural reproduction. This is the reproduction of the culture of dominant classes. So these groups have the power to impose meanings and to impose them as legitimate. They're able to define their own culture as worthy of being sought and possessed, to establish it as a basis for knowledge in the education system. However, there is no way of showing that they are any better or worse than other subcultures in society. Bourdieu refers to the position of dominant culture as cultural capital, because with the education system, it can't be translated into wealth and power. Cultural capital is not evenly distributed throughout the class structure, and this largely accounts for the class differences in educational attainment. People who have upper class backgrounds have a built-in advantage because they've been socialized in a dominant culture. So, having said all these, what can we learn from the major theorists? The major theorists are saying that the education system is not structured in such a way that it can take on board the diversity. When Lola gave me this question, I thought about it and I said, well, I can give you many practical examples of what children can do. But the problem is structural. The problem is that we aren't able to celebrate the diversity. And in countries like South Africa and Nigeria, that has to be the first step. What are the characteristics of working class communities in South Africa and Nigeria? What are the characteristics of working class children in the United Kingdom and in the United States? And how do you address this issue? What are the practical considerations that you need to take on board in terms of understanding and addressing these challenges? And so my view is
cooperation, especially international cooperation in institutions.
I'm so sorry I gotta put this off.
When the world really needs to come together.
I'm so sorry. I was supposed to be in another meeting. So, okay. So what needs to happen is that the curriculum development and the development of the curriculum needs to reflect the diversity of the communities in a particular country. So Professor Umara, I think that if we don't change the curriculum, if we don't change the schooling system, if we rely on models that are exposed, I understand the value of the Western world. I understand the value of UNICEF, the UN, the Japanese organizations that you speak about. Yes, they're very valuable. We need them. But we need to create in our countries a system that looks at the diversity that we're confronted with. So in my view, I think if the United Kingdom, with all the sociological research, if they focused on life skills, if they focused on the self-esteem, the self-confidence, if they paid more attention in the foundation phase for children who come from working class communities and are able to look at the, understand the value and the potential of education, we would have a totally different system in the developing world, right? We cannot continue with this system because too many children are alienated from the mainstream of education, right? We need to rethink, we need to rework, and we need to re-understand the implications between poverty and education. And what does it mean pedagogically for us to change? So that's the question I'm going to leave you with. What does it mean pedagogically for the system to embrace this diversity? Thank you, Didi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much for a very brief but apt presentation. You know, I was trying to put the, your last statement, I was trying to see the link between the problem that Prof spoke about and then the solution that you provided. What a perfect mix. And I love the fact that you talked about that there's a link between poverty and education, which you try to talk about in all the structures that you put out there. And then most importantly, you spoke about the curriculum, which also links back to what Professor Ibrahim spoke about when he talked about the children, those other families who during his time didn't give their consent for the children in the Sangaya to have access to the primary or Western education. So there's actually a correlation between the curriculum and then the children who are excluded. So thank you very much, Professor Sigamoni, for this presentation, and thank you also to Professor Ibrahim. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to open up the Q&A now. Prof, please don't leave. I know you're trying to, you're also in 2 meetings at the same time, but let's do this Q&A for just 10 minutes. And then, because I know there are lots of questions out here. So, yes, so we have some questions that have been sent in already. And yes, Prof. Ibrahim, I think this one goes to you first. And the person is asking, do you think that inclusion, and Prof. Sigamoni, if you have something to add, I'm sure you may also want to take this. He said, do you think that inclusion is a strategy to curb Boko Haram? And I believe this person is a Nigerian, because these are the issues that we are facing right now. The children that have been excluded, do you think that there's inclusion can help curb the issues of Boko Haram in Nigeria, or the issue of inclusion?
Yes, obviously. That is the reason why the Borno State government set up our committee, high power committee on reform of the Sangaya. Because if you didn't provide an enabling environment that will sufficiently observe these out-of-school children, they will be used against the community in order to bolster the ranks and the files of the insurgent. That has been the philosophy of the state government. And then number two, as I earlier mentioned of the International Development Partners intervention, they had built too many structures in schools with modern facilities and the equipment for the absorption. And I have to tell you that more than 80% of the schools, both at the primary and the secondary school level, have been displaced, and most of them were jam-packed in one school or the other across the Maiduguri metropolis for the fear of abduction or kidnapping, as it happened in Chibok. So inclusion is one of the greatest strategies, because it is only through education that we will try to subdue, we'll try to conscientize, we will try to protect these children from being conscripted to go against the norms and the values of the community. And that has been the policy of the government. And as the professor rightly observed, apart from the curriculum that was used, there were learning centers that were established, which was based on entrepreneurship and skill acquisition techniques. So we had very good and well-equipped schools with instructors that would really create an opportunity for those that were either associates or those that were out of school, for them to forgo training in supporting their means of livelihood. So these skills were essential. So this is a strategy used by the Borno State government and impliedly by the Federal Republic of Nigeria in order to bring them in order to
back to school. Okay. Okay. We have, thank you very much, Prof. Ibrahim. Now, Prof. Sigamoni, I want you to take this particular question because it talks about, it has a linkage with the curriculum. Even though this is going to be linked to the Sangaya, educational system. This person is asking, how can skills acquisition, reading, writing, be introduced into the Sangaya curriculum that will make the children fit into the world class opportunities, or fit into world class opportunities?
Yeah, I'm sure Professor Umara is going to agree with me when I say that you have to look at the culture, and you have to look at the way the children have been rooted and socialized. You can't have a system imposed on people that alienates them from their roots, right? And I think education has been now dominated by politics, by money, by personalities, and it has lost its pedagogical value and sense. So nobody would ask that question if the education philosophy that we often talk about and the theory that we develop is taken seriously in understanding the curriculum challenges. I'll stop there, Didi.
Okay, in addition to
Prof, you want to add something?
In addition to the pedagogical aspect that you talked about, the practical experience that we had in Borno State through the BESDA World Bank project was for each Sangaya to be identified. And as I said, we have Thursday throughout, and then the morning session on Friday. We had no Quranic sessions. So it was around these 2 days within which graduates were identified to come into the Sangaya and teach these Sangaya pupils English and mathematics. This is literary, as Prof already observed. But we are now talking within the context of literary. We are not talking about the utilization and the obsolescence of the educational system. We are now talking about people who will have the ability to appreciate, understand, read, and write. So the BESDA project through the World Bank had earmarked some Sangayas that the BESDA fair facilitators, who are often graduates and NCE holder. NCE holder means National Certificate of Education. Those that already have a certificate program will be employed to teach these Sangayas the alphabets and then the numbering. And then after graduation in the Sangaya, at least they can read and write, and then they can transact their businesses in English. And this will pave a way for them to be admitted into junior secondary school or senior secondary school. That has been the strategy. So right now, Borno State government through the World Bank is already implementing this project.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Ibrahim. I'm just going to ask this last question. Please, we are running behind time, so please, every other question we'll try to take as we proceed. My question is, while you were giving your analogy, you talked about parents, consent, children, parents handing over children to you.
Yes.
On a trust basis. And
Yes.
they want these children to only study the Quran.
Yes.
Now, where is the place of advocacy, considering the fact that things have changed? What is your institute, now let me use it because it's a learning center, what is it doing to try to change? Because these people believe in you and they come to you, they see you as, where is the place of advocacy and sensitization to open up to other?
That is the reason why the Borno State Governor, His Excellency Professor Babagana Umar Zulum, informed him to establish the higher powered committee that now led to the establishment of Arabic and Quranic school board. So now they use our personalities to reach out to the parents that there are changing times, that today, even if you are to withdraw your money at the ATM post, you must identify the numbering, you must read your text message and whatsoever. So through that, we use the traditional institutions such as the Shehu, such as the Chief Imam, community leaders, and we have been going house to house. We were advocating through radio and television stations in order to convince the people to adjust to the changing circumstances as the situation and the system warrants.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes.
So
Yes,
I know Professor Sigamoni has another meeting going, but if you can stay back, we'd really love to have you. But thank you very much, Prof. And thank you, Professor Ibrahim, for spending this time and taking our Q&A. Thank you very much. Thank you. So at this point, we're going to be having our next speaker. She's going to be taking us on another very, very important topic. You know that we have looked at all the other children that are out of school, and then we also have other kids that have very special capabilities that they may not, people don't even take them into consideration. So we have coming up or speaking to us next is Latoya Tekoa. She's going to be speaking to us on practical steps for identifying and supporting a gifted or twice exceptional child in school. So, ma'am, you have the time and you'll be speaking to us for just 20 minutes.
All right, thank you all. Thank you so very much. Can everyone hear me?
Oh, yes, loud and clear.
Okay. I'd like to say thank you once again for the opportunity. I will be speaking to you all on practical steps on identifying and supporting a gifted and twice exceptional student. And I will also refer to that child as a learner. A little bit about myself. Let me go ahead and share the screen. Here. So my story, it exemplifies, I have two beautiful daughters. And once I got this topic, I really thought it was very, I wouldn't even use the word ironic, but I would just say it was very in line with my life today. So I have a 17-year-old who's Valencia, very outgoing yet shy, to some. But she was born with Erb's palsy. Erb's palsy just later on gave her, it's a birth injury. It later on struck her nerves in her right arm, as well as some mentally, being mentally delayed. However, she is also very strong and passionate about math, science, and all of the, curriculum areas, academy areas here that she's just thriving in. And a lot of people could not understand it, me being one of those people. I also have a 12-year-old, Victoria. She's gifted, very bubbly, and I oftentimes have to tell her just to breathe, catch her breath, slow down. Before she even moves forward. She's full of energy, full of all things educational. Some things I have to just take a step back and say, okay, I have no clue what this child is talking about. So that brings me to my next slide. Here, as you look at this picture, what is the first thing that you see? Some of you all may say, I see a tree. Some people may see, I see a gorilla, a lion, either one. We often see these pictures, these images. Oh, if you see this, your this side of the brain is working for you. If you see that, the right side of the brain is working for you. Truth of the matter is, any image that you have said that you're seeing is correct. Moving forward, what is giftedness? Giftedness is the outstanding aptitude or competence in one or more domains, and that came from the National Association for Gifted Students. My perception is oftentimes as a gifted learner, the learner may receive the tools necessary to flourish. Why? Educators may assume that the learner will be fine on their own. Their needs are often overlooked. The student begins to do just enough to get by. Boredom may sit in and strike due to lack of attention. And as an educator, what do? Sometimes we sit back and sometimes we gravitate to that child to figure out why. What is twice exceptional? Twice exceptional learners have gigantic strengths with decompressed weaknesses. The strengths label them gifted, but the weaknesses label them disabled. Some refer to this acronym as 2E. My perception as a twice exceptional learner is that the learner attends school in the midst that the cases, they only receive half of what they need. And why is this often what they have, that they often receive half of what they need? It's typically because the educator or whoever is responsible for that learner often just zoom in on their strengths or either their weaknesses. So they either receive half of what they need, primarily because it's overlooked. Identifying gifted learners. Before I move on to that, I'd like to just start by saying that there are many key factors that separates a child's educational level. No two children are exactly the same. Oftentimes we, as educators, we do comparison, and that's where we fail them as educators. So there are some key elements such as the genetics, the community, the environment that helps or disable a child to strengthen their weaknesses. And mainly, we have to go back to the dashboard to realize that a lot of children that are being overlooked, they have neurodevelopmental issues or disorders. For instance, we all know that it's not an easy task. I know firsthand as a mother, it's not an easy task to raise a child that has a neurodevelopmental issue. You get frustrated. You have so many stresses that come at you financially. You oftentimes you worry about that child. It's as far as when they leave the home, and outside of your peripheral view. So, what do you do as a parent? You generally rely on the resources from the educators. Sometimes you may have a parent that has done their research, has keen into all the things that's needed for their child. But what happens to the parents that do not have a clue? They generally, lean into the resources that they find within the educators. Typically, excuse me, typically at this time, what if the educators have no clue as to what is going on with the child? I mean, you have to have that heart and that passion to go forward, to help that child. Oftentimes, as far as myself being an educator here, I have seen firsthand where a child may have been labeled to have autism. And once I receive that child, I do my own assessment. And I'm like, no, there's another area that, that's linking that child to something else. That I'm gonna be honest, sometimes as an educator, you're lazy. Okay, this person may have the information, the assessment guided as the child has an autism. However, when you find out that, hey, this person just pushed them along. And I oftentimes see that in IEPs. As I do a lot of IEP consultations here, I see that there's a lot of misinformation. The child is mishandled. And there's all sorts of things that go along with that. But what type of help does a child really receive when we sit back and try to identify if that child has any disorder, if that child has anything to label them outside of the norm? So moving forward, I have some characteristics of identifying a gifted learner. Some signs that you may see, and these may not be all the signs. I may have some that I have left, particularly because it does kind of intertwine with another area. Some signs that you will see, that the child may be quiet and focused into their work. They may be labeled as an overachiever. Maybe they're able to quote values of topics of anything dealing with current events, just full of information. They may be easily bored, hyperactive. They can be labeled as a perfectionist, even a class clown. And oftentimes you see gifted students have broad vocabulary, some vocabulary that's higher than some of the educators. And now when we zoom in and focus on identifying twice exceptional learners, some of the characteristics that they may have is having trouble to follow along, not being focused on the task at hand, being easily distracted, overly detailed, or showing lack of interest on a project or classwork. They may often avoid things that may be easy for others, but they find it difficult for themselves. They're constantly moving around in and out of their seats. They may talk too much or may not talk at all, and they may have sudden impulsiveness. And with that sudden impulsiveness, I want to key in with that really quickly. As a former EBD educator, emotional behavior disorder teacher, the sudden impulsiveness can oftentimes put the child into trouble, to the point where they don't even know who they are. They have the anger, the rage. And what do you do in these situations? How do you handle that as an educator? These are some of the things that we have to do as educators to make sure that we're ensuring them that, in this journey that they're having, that it is okay, that someone is there for them. Sorry. Supporting these students. What does it mean to be supportive? Well, I have the acronym to be available. A, you need to access everything about that child. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? V, visualize. Visualize the child needs, chart them. I oftentimes, when I was a teacher, I would have a full tablet, with the child's name, their birthday, just current things about them that I know that I needed to have as a teacher. What do they like? What are their dislikes? Study them, visualize what's really going on with them. Acknowledge. Acknowledge the child. What do you know about this child? Their strengths, their weaknesses. Acknowledge the fact that they do have something that's going on with them, that you can zoom into to try to help. Acknowledge the fact that, hey, are there parents in their lives? Is there someone there to support them at home after school? Because a lot of times the children do have problems when it's time to go home. School has been the safe haven for a lot of children. Instruct, teach them on the child's level. Like I said before, no two children are the same. I can't expect for Johnny to do the same thing that Matthew's doing. There's no way, no way possible. My approach to Johnny could be totally opposite, to the approach to Matthew. Love, love. Being supportive, you have to love what you do. You have to have the heart for these children. Like I said, it's not an easy task. However, it can be done with the right elements, the right approach. And love is one of the very key elements of being supportive for these children. A, adjust. Remember, it's not an easy task. So even with your lesson plans, even with the children at hand, adjust to who they are. Adjust, accommodate them in the classroom as an educator, accommodate them even outside of the classroom. Hey, what can I do as an educator to send home with little Susie to help her, to encourage her? Be brace. Brace yourself for the challenge. I'm not saying that every day will be an easy task, moving forward to help these children, but you really have to brace yourself and remember to put yourself in their shoes. And as a child, who helped you, to think back to that time where, there was a difficult moment in your life, a challenging moment in your life, brace yourself, give them the same grace that you would want someone to give you. L, for lasting, avoid burnouts. That's one of the key elements to supporting these children. Avoid burnouts. Sometimes the children may be very challenging. Like I said, have rage issues, anger, all sorts of things that they may project to you. Just know that it's, not to take it personal, to last in your field, to always be available to help them. And E, execute. Have the plan not only on behalf of as an educator, but have the plan to execute every element that these children may need in order to help them. Like I said before, be that family outside of family. Be the one that they run to say, you know what, Miss Latoya, she helped me, and I will always remember the fact that she was available for me. She stood in the gap even when I didn't even understand what was going on for myself. So execute that plan, execute the way to speak to the child, be a liaison to the family. And these are some of the ways to be supportive to both a gifted student and a twice exceptional student. Like I said, I always like to refer back to my own children. With my oldest, Valencia, with her having Earth's palsy, she, oftentimes suffer from anxiety, test anxiety, but here in Atlanta, she's able to have those extra minutes or maybe perhaps an hour on her exams, the things that she needs. And I'm also very grateful for the resources that I have received to help me. Oftentimes you think, hey, I'm a professional in this field, but needless to say, we don't always know it all. Me as a mother, I had to take my emotions out of, hey, there's something wrong with my child, and zoom in and key in and focus and say, you know what? Instead of me throwing a pity party, and crying as a mother, being a nurturer, I'm zooming in and keying in to what she actually needs. And I can truly say that the help that I had gotten her from when she was younger has truly, truly been a help to her now. Right now, she's a senior in high school. She's in dual enrollment, and she's studying to be a nurse practitioner once she goes off to college. Well, right now, she's in the nursing program, and she's excelling. And I oftentimes think back to if I were not to receive those resources, if the teachers that she had from before was not available for her, where would we be? She could continuously, have delays. And oftentimes I also look at my youngest, Victoria. She's gifted and very wise, but sometimes that can be a burden on the teacher as well. I will oftentimes get notes from the teacher, oh, can you send in something extra for Victoria to do? Right now, she's already completed the assignment. And, as an educator, you want, all the children to be somewhat along on the same pace. However, that's not always the case. So like I said before, be able to identify these students, these learners, making sure that you're putting yourself in their shoes. Not only that, making sure that you're allowing them to be vibrant, pulling out their weaknesses and allowing them to tell, to showcase who they really are. What makes them vibrant? I'll let that be my last statement. I always think about the learners. What makes them vibrant? Remember, everything that is easy for one child may not be easy for the next. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Latoya. You did so. In fact, while you were speaking, I was also trying to walk through your shoes and I also have a son who you described when you talked about children who are twice exceptional. And I'm thinking to myself, could that young man be actually twice exceptional? And but I want to ask, do you think that the twice exceptional, are they kind of maybe a term, maybe we use to make ourselves feel better? Because most of the things you spoke about, you enumerated as how we could identify them, actually align to children on the autism spectrum. Yes. I have a son who is on the autism spectrum, and while you were, reading out what they do, easy tasks like difficult for them, they're pacing around, they get bored easily. Is that the definition you were trying to, maybe a good way of making parents like me feel, oh, okay, yeah, it's not that bad, he's just twice exceptional? Is that what you mean? Or is there any other definition to the twice exceptional term right now?
So with twice exceptional, really and truly, honestly, you have to, like I said, assess the child. A lot of people do like psychology tests or whatnot. However, since I'm already in the field, I did take my daughter to a psychologist to try to figure out exactly what area, that she's lacking in. And I know the disability that she does have, she has developmental delays. However, upon doing research in her IQ test, and I won't always say that the IQ test is just the top of the top, hey, this is what it is. However, I will say that just studying who she is, just making sure that your child, I would say this for the most part, just making sure that your child is not lacking in some areas compared to the next areas, then that will qualify that child as a twice exceptional student. Like I said, looking at the domains of the strengths and the weaknesses, your child may be have a very intellectual high level in, academics. However, it may be certain things that are very, very difficult for that child to do, such as maybe designing a box, something that we as typical people would say, oh, that's easy. Just something that's just outside of the norm. We have to check into what's outside of the norm for that child.
Thank you very much, Latoya. I think you did justice to that topic, and it was really eye-opening for someone like me. Are there any questions? Let's see if you have. What I'm seeing here are basically comments. Yeah, people quite appreciate the presentation. Okay, so there are no more questions. So I wanted to ask, since it looks like, we have something in common. You talked about a lot of resources that you have access to. And I know for the past 3 days, we have had an overload of, information coming in that has helped parents and caregivers and even those educators also to really know how to, make the educational system more inclusive for children with special needs. So please, on behalf of all of us here, some people may not be able to say it. I will appreciate if you can share most of these resources with Cadet Academy so that, those who are interested also could have access, because it's part of what we've been learning for the past 3 days.
Absolutely. I can also email links for the resources to Cadet Academy or to Ms. Lola. That way everyone will have that opportunity to see those, to get those resources as well.
Thank you very much. That will be really helpful. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go straight to our panel. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I got muted. And I know our panelists are, already here. So please, the panelists, I'm sure you're ready. We have Irene Bangwell, we have Olarunwaju Yusuf, and we have Anuoluwapo Akingbemila. So we're going to open the floor for our panelists now. I know they're already here. Yes, okay. So we've had a lot of discussion today, and there's just so much that, we just have to ponder upon and then see how best, we can digest some of the information that we have heard. We started with Professor Ibrahim, who took us through the out-of-school children, talking about children who, sometimes we think their Almajiris are really the out-of-school children, but they seem to have a structure. But when you go to the northern Nigeria, you see a lot of children on the street. And now we have been told that some of these children, find themselves in this position because of perhaps insurgency, or some of them have been displaced from their homes. A lot of factors that we have gotten to know today. And then Prof came also talking about the poverty and education, and then saying that a very strong point that the educational system doesn't take into consideration the diversity of the people. So we have a lot to talk about here, my dear panelists. So I'm just going to throw this question, my first question here, and then just tease your thoughts. Maybe we could just keep it. We have for this session, we're just going to do this real quick. And we're doing this for only 20 minutes. So I'm just going to throw my first question just as a teaser, and then I'll direct the questions to each of the panelists as we proceed. So my very first question to everyone, are there any procedures that you are aware of for determining how many children are out of school and their characteristics? Maybe looking at it from the area of gender, disability status, ethnicity, labor participation, or any other factor that could impact the out-of-school children, the lives of these out-of-school children. Are there any procedures that you are aware of? I appreciate any of our panelists to pick this up at this point. Okay, Mr. Lanre seems to be, really giving me that smile. So, Mr. Lanre, do you want to go first?
Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Didi. Well, the smile wasn't for the question, but well, I'll just probably just jump in since I've been called. I think as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to start from congratulating Cadet Academy for having a very, very awesome event. It's been a very insightful couple of sessions. All the speakers have really, really done justice to the topic that they've been given. To the best of my knowledge, I do not know that there are any clear-cut procedures for identifying out-of-school children, just like you mentioned. I know that the Nigerian government has tried a lot of strategies over time. We've had different interventions, like Professor Ibrahim mentioned. You had the World Bank, you've had the Japanese government. They do a lot of survey, they do a lot of research, and they deploy their own different strategies to actually getting an accurate number of the out-of-school children that we have in Nigeria. And I do not think that any one procedure has been recommended as being the best. For me, I think that what works best for me would be to decentralize the process of data collection. When I say decentralize it, if we have just one particular body, one particular agency running it from somewhere like Abuja, I don't think they are going to have an accurate they're going to have an accurate picture of it, because you see the conditions, the factors that affect, like Professor Ibrahim was mentioning, the factors that affect learners in the Northeast might not even be the ones that affect learners in the Northwest. And this is a place where they are quite similar in terms of tribe, in terms of language, in terms of religion and outlook, but they don't also have the same conditions affecting them. So I think my own recommendation from my own side would be a decentralized process. That would probably be the only way where we can have any single procedure work to the fullest of its ability. And I think that's my own recommendation from my side. I'll leave the floor for other panelists to probably chip in also too, what they have to say.
Okay, so Irene, you want to add to this? You have any information you would like to share with us?
Yeah, good afternoon. So good to be here. Congratulations to the KDET team again for doing putting together an amazing conference. So I think that the previous speaker has actually touched a number of the things I would have loved to talk about and even educated me a little bit more. However, so far, I know that one of the ways they've been able to gather out of school children's, get the numbers has been with enrollment. So for example, using data from, say, National Bureau of Statistics, we're seeing children who, we're seeing the numbers that are finishing primary school, but that number is not resuming in secondary school the following school year. And so we can pick out the rate at that level, especially when we're studying maybe around a particular region, for instance. So we're also seeing another data that is showing the number of students enrolled in JSS1, and then the number that enroll in JSS2. And then where the biggest dropout rates for us as a country is at the moment is in JSS3. After JSS3, we're not seeing nearly 55% of the girls completing JSS3 are not coming into SS1. However, because the data is general, we are not really capturing why and what. So for instance, in the Southeast, for example, they also have high dropout rates for boys. And this dropout rate is suggesting that boys are dropping out from mainstream education into apprenticeship. But the data is not, I don't think we have a very comprehensive system in gathering this data. So far, with the different initiatives that I've been a part of, we're just working with the numbers. We're just working with the areas. You get the data for a certain state you're working with, and then you just work with what you have. But like Mr. Lanre, I believe that's his name, right? Mr. Lanre rightly said, we have to decentralize the approach, right? And then we need to not just get numbers. We really need to start capturing in each region, in each community, what's the reason. For instance, I like to imagine that sometimes even in the North, if we're using just enrollment, where families are moving a lot because of crisis. They may be moving into other communities and enrolling in those communities, whereas they've already been marked as having dropped out this way. So yeah, we need to decentralize.
Yeah.
Yes, I absolutely believe that we need to decentralize.
Thank you very much, Irene, for putting in that insight. That was also really helpful. Prof. Sigamoni spoke about the curriculum, and he made a very big statement where he talked about that our curriculum does not, consider the diversity of the people. And, even when Prof. Ibrahim was making his own presentation, he kept talking. I think it struck me when he said that parents actually give the children to him based on trust. Now, those parents, all they want is just for them to have the learning of the Quran, because that's all they know and that's all they believe. Perhaps if they could, I asked the question of the incentives. Maybe if there could be something within the educational system that makes them or brings in the Quran, or maybe something that takes into consideration the fears of those parents, that would make it a little bit, make them enroll their children. So what are your thoughts on this? Do you also think that maybe having a rejig of our curriculum could actually help, in reducing the number of children that we have out of school? My guests, my panelists, are they all gone? Mr. Lanre, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes,
okay,
I am.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
I was asking about your thoughts on the curriculum, being that saying that the curriculum does not support the diversity of the people, and that's why we have a lot of children who are out of school.
Okay.
What's your thoughts on this?
Okay, so thank you very much for that also interesting question. Before I answer the question, I'd like to just say thank you very much, Madam Irene, for that very important and very clear answer on enrollment and then the drop-off rate also too. Now, is the curriculum responsible for the large number of out-of-school children that we have? No, a categorical no. To a small extent, yes, and I'll explain. It's a categorical no for me. I believe that citing the cases that Madam Irene mentioned, the curriculum is not the reason why they are dropping out in the north. The curriculum is not the reason why they are dropping out of school in the southwest. It may be a reason why they're dropping out in the southeast. Now, for example, what she mentioned was that when you look at the southeast, you have the high drop-off rate for males happens when they are in GSS 3. Why? Because you see, the society is structured around trade. Now, if you have a curriculum that addresses that concern of the society, a curriculum that has infused things like practical skills that children can use, that these young males can use in the next 4 or 5 years of their lives that they're spending in secondary school, maybe we could have a reduction in the number of males dropping out of school. But if you come to the Northeast and you come to the Northwest and you come to the South, I do not think the curriculum is the main reason why people are dropping off. There could be other societal concerns. There could be cultural reasons. Like, for example, in the North, you have a high rate of dropout for girls when they get to secondary school because these girls need to go and get married. These girls are not really considered to have much to do with education at that level. They just need to know how to read and write. Now, there's nothing you can fix in the curriculum that's going to prepare them for what society wants them to do once they are above age 13 or 14. So I don't think the curriculum is the problem there. But can we rejig our curriculum to actually make education more attractive to those who find education currently unattractive and are dropping out of school? A categorical yes to that. How can we do that? I'll leave that question to be answered by people who are better qualified than I am. Thank you very much.
All right, so thank you for sharing. Somehow you went off and you still came back to the main point where we talked about the curriculum. Because if we actually look at children with special needs, the school curriculum, and I say that as a parent, I introduced myself as a parent who has a child on the autism spectrum. Now, the way the program in school is structured doesn't really suit my son. There are some things he's not able to do. There are some courses I would love to see on the school as part of the school program. But if I don't get that, then I have to keep him in a special school. But I would love him to be in the regular, in mainstream school so he could interact. So
Yes.
we can't really take away the place of, the curriculum and perhaps the school program from, also leading to exclusion of some kind of children
Yes.
within the educational sector. So I have my other panelists who left as a result of network, I guess. I know Oluwapo, welcome back.
Thank you very
So
much.
we've had a lot of discussion, and I would really love you to also share your thoughts. First, we talked about procedure for gathering data for out-of-school children, but your co-panelists have done justice to that. I would just want you to maybe look at something else within the Nigerian education system. To what extent do you think that the policies or guidelines that guide the educational system are funded? How is the funding allocated and channeled to the recipients? Or do you think it is sufficient to realize the goals of the national policy on inclusive education? If this question took you off guard, I may have to rejig it a little bit. But what do you think? What's the place of the policies and guidelines, within the educational system? Do you think they're well funded?
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lola, for this opportunity. Okay, I think for me, to be honest, I just feel like when it comes to public policy, when it comes to policies and the education system in Nigeria, I think that we are not really at our best. I mean, I'm sure there's been a struggle when it comes to allocation generally, when it comes to the national budgets and the education system. There is supposed to be sorry, please, a minute. There's supposed to be there's a standard requirement, there's a standard figure that is required for when it comes to the budget that should be allocated to the education system, which, to be honest, we are really, really struggling with as a country. So I think that when it comes to funding, for both the funding that is channeled into the education system and the funding that is channeled into, policy making, making policies that are favorable to a sustainable and a better education system. In my opinion, I don't think, we are doing just enough, really. I really don't think we're doing just enough because, yeah. Okay.
Yes. So let me ask. I know Vivian, you're still here. Yeah. So let me ask your thoughts on this, because I would really love us to know what policies, because she's talking about we are not even funded. Well, are you aware of any specific policy in Nigeria that manages child protection and inclusion? Do we even have, because that should actually be our starting point. Do we have a policy at all? Are you aware of any? And Ms. Alare, you may also want to share your thoughts as we begin to wrap up this session.
Okay, so it's this.
Oh, okay, yes. Irene, please. Irene,
because but that device is named Vivian, okay? So okay, I run a secondary school, and I'm not aware of, I run a secondary school, of which I think that as a country, we're supposed to have a comprehensive plan. Like if you're setting up a school and let's say the DQA is coming to check your stuff, you want to be able to hear that, oh, this and this is required of you. For example, what are the structures you have in place to have an inclusive space? Because it looks like that's what is supposed to be the ideal. But I'm not aware of any, I've never had any inspector come to talk to me about such a policy. Maybe I need to go out of my way to do that. But I just wanted to use this opportunity to highlight something very significant.
Yes, go ahead.
Children in I run a low-cost school. And so with low-cost schools, imagine that you're looking at a public school system. children's needs are not narrowed into like that. There's a lot of generalization. If a child is not doing well, is not intelligent, there's a lot of lumping. There's not enough. For instance, one of the things that I am beginning to build an interest in is what simple tools exist for low-cost schools and public schools who cater for children who would not be able to go in to see a doctor and access professional service. What tools are available that we can use to support these learners? Because I feel like the average educator in Nigeria, just in generally, we don't know quite a lot about children with special needs or learning disability. So it's easy to lump them. So I'm one educator that at the end of the school year, I'm looking at a child's performance, what's happening. This child seems to be able to do more than I'm seeing in their grades. What's the disconnect? So we don't know as a nation, we don't seem to have a comprehensive framework where all educators know that these are the indicators. Or we feel like, oh, it has to be autistic to be special needs. We don't know that it's a broad spectrum. There's a lot of things going on here. So because of that, government could have been the most effective vehicle to push the knowledge, to say this is the policy and these are the tools available. This is what you do. I think that is one of the areas where there is a gap. It's possible that I'm not accessing the content or the materials or the resources. Yeah. But when DQA comes, I'd like to see that on their checklist. I'd like to see them tell me this, you're supposed to have this. You're supposed to put, for example, when we host PWDs in our facility, they're asking you where are the RAMs, where are the this, where are the that, because they are that you should have them. So, but when DQA comes, it's not even in when you're getting the guidelines for all of your approvals, it's not necessarily on the list. So at some point, I think that the average educator thinks that there is a school, there's a ministry responsible for special needs. But when we start talking inclusion, it means that there has to be an integration. We need to overlap at some point. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Irene, for putting that in perspective. So let me come back to you, Anoluapo. Okay. As Latoya made a very good presentation on this twice exceptional school and children. And, this policy we talked about should be able to identify this kind of children, because sometimes she mentioned while she was making her points, how we identify some of them. They could be bored. You could have children who are twice exceptional in the real sense, and then you're taking them on a particular grade, maybe a level. I'm not a teacher, so pardon my English, just a step below. But that child has more capacity to take more. But these are things that the policy, or maybe some people, there should be some kind of structure. What's your take on this, and how is this affecting children? Because after some times, I feel maybe like when I was much younger, you just lose interest. And then we have children who would have been extremely smart, being frustrated, and then just giving up within the education system. What's your take on this?
Okay. Okay, so I would like to say that first off, my what's the word now? My perception, or what I know about twice exceptional learners, are children who are gifted, meaning children who have outstanding abilities, and at the same time, they have some parts of they're experiencing some kind of or they are also neurodivergent. So let me just put it that way. Now, so I think that policies. I mean, Irene already said it, that she owns a school and then she doesn't even see these things. There are no what's it called now? Nobody's asking, nobody's saying, nobody's, there is no standard operating procedure, or there's no, nobody's checking to see what you're doing right and what you're not doing right. So I think that as educators, as teachers, the onus is on us. It falls back to us to be able to educate ourselves as school owners, to be able to educate your teachers such that they are also able to, thank God, I mean, many thanks again to Cadet Academy, to Lola for organizing this seminar, because I feel like some educators on here must have learned a thing or two, especially from Latoya's session, how to identify these children, how to accommodate them, and all of that. So we need more of these things, to be very honest, because so you have some, and I think that it is also a part of what contributes to the increase in out of school children. How do I mean? So the thing is, you have children who are exceptionally brilliant, so I tag them as the gifted children, who, to be very honest, the current education system or the current curriculum that we have or that we use, it doesn't work for them. It really doesn't work for them. And they don't want to be in school because they feel like it's a waste of their time. Sometimes, so the onus is on us as educators to be able to, educators and parents, to be able to identify our children, to be able to say, okay, this is what my child can do. This is the extent to which, this is what I think about this child, and then find a way to include them in their school, basically. As parents, I mean, sometimes as parents, we have to be the ones to say, this is what I've seen about my child. Talk to the school owners, their teachers, and so this is like building a curriculum, a sub-curriculum out of what is globally given to us, or globally the standard national curriculum.
I quite appreciate that point you brought, because we've been focusing on the educators. I love the fact that you brought in the part of the parents, because yes, the child spends more time with the school, but you as a parent, there are some things that you could also observe about your child that you could also share with the school that could make them maybe bring up a discussion. How is this child doing?
Yes.
How is he managing? I had an experience like that with my son when he was much younger, my first son actually. And every time the teacher told me he was being distracted. So one day I walked into the school and I said, let's have a discussion. Why is he always distracted? And he said, before I introduce a topic, he will either be saying it and then other kids will be distracted. But that's actually an exceptional child. So we had to sit down, the parents, me and the teacher. So what do we do to engage this child when this child, being that his IQ seems to be a little bit higher than his peers. So thank you very much for bringing that point up. And thank you very much to our panelists. I think we really had a very good discussion. Thank you very much, Irene Bangwell. Thank you. I can see that you're out and about, but you took your time to do this session. Thank you very much. And Mr. Lanre Yusuf, thank you very much for your time. And Anu Oluwapo Akingbemila, I really tried to do that. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. Thank you. Thank you. So we are really running behind time, or are we running ahead of time? But whichever way we are running, whichever direction, we're going to be having our next item on the agenda, which happens to be one of the high points of this program. And we're looking at the award presentation. Oh, sorry, before then, we're looking at the launch of the African Understanding Dyslexia Program. This would have been done originally by Tiffany James, the director of Nessie Learning, but she's not here. But our own able executive director of the Cadet Academy, Mrs. Lola Aneke, will be taking us on this particular segment, just for 15 minutes. I still run the show. All right, so over to you, Lola.
I'm the landlady, so I might as well take my power to do this. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I've learned so much. The exciting about this conference is that I don't get to speak, so I get to learn. Thank you. I've learned so much. Thank you to our speakers, to everyone. You've been great. I love every one of you. You brought your A game, and I appreciate you. So real quick to the launch of the African Dyslexia training program. I'll tell you a little story and how we birthed this. So in 2020, just about the middle of COVID, I think I should backtrack a bit. So sometime in like 4 or 5 years ago, it took me 4 or 5 years ago, 2012, yes, 2012 or thereabout, we had our first dyslexia training, and then we went on and did other things. And then in 2020, I felt, because we used to do training to go around Nigeria to have trainings to empower teachers. And that's what even birthed this Global Inclusive Education Virtual Summer Camp. And then I said to myself and my team, I said, we might not be able to go to places still because of COVID, but then we can make use of writing books, to make the books can go further than we can go. And then I wrote the Dyslexia Bible, which was launched in October 2020. But while I was doing my research on how to get someone to do the forward and just look at the content, at about that time I also met with Tiffany, who happens to be the vice president of Nestle Learning. I'll say a little bit about the Nestle Learning very soon. But then when she looked at the Dyslexia Bible, she said to me, Lola, have you seen the Nestle Learning programs on dyslexia? And then I went through it and it was amazing. But then I said to her, she said to me, do you think we can do something like that for the African populace? I said, why not? But we need to make it our own. And then she said, we could. And one of the reasons I actually agreed to that was they were just simple short videos explaining what dyslexia is, but more of the American and the British context. So I said, let's bring it in an African who will do the voiceover. Let's make the pictures African, let's make them black. And that's how we came about the African Understanding Dyslexia Training Program. It's a short course to quickly learn the basics of dyslexia. So the Cadet Academy, in partnership with Nestle Learning, we put this together to support parents and teachers in African countries to learn how to identify and how to help individuals with dyslexia. Now, if you want to know all about Nestle Learning, please just go to the website. You will see the great work they're doing all around the world, over 192 countries. But I'll just read a little bit about them. Tiffany can't be here. She have done justice to explain what they do. I'll read a little bit about them, and then I go on to explain what the program looks like. And immediately I finish, you're going to see a video clip on just a video clip or a short video clip on what the program also look like. So I'll just quickly read about the Nestle, what Nestle is. Nestle is based in the United Kingdom and the United States. Remember I said the program was basically in UK and US context and the language. And Nestle produces award-winning educational software programs for children with dyslexia used worldwide in over 10,000 schools and homes in 192 countries around the world. Nestle Learning creates multisensory programs and apps that help children learn to read, spell, and improve numeracy skills using autoglycan method, gamification, and individualized instruction. I think it just talked about all that we're talking about today, individualized, who is this child, how can this child best learn? And then Nestle Learning can help children up to the age of 12 learn to read, spell, and improve their numeracy skills through fun, multisensory games, videos, and worksheets. Basically, the best way to teach individuals with dyslexia. Now, Nestle now also provides support for teachers, learning assistants, and parents to the development of our new dyslexia training program. A 2-hour introduction to dyslexia, its signs, symptoms, and teaching strategies for children who have it. The Nestle program has been developed with the help of the Bristol Dyslexia Center, ensuring that educational content is effective and relevant to the school curriculum. Now, the African Understanding Dyslexia course has 6 modules and 20 videos that include essential information you need to know about dyslexia. The videos are only 2 to 3 minutes long, so the information is easy to understand. Now, the training video will give you hints and tips. Each session is followed by a short quiz to test your knowledge. The training can be done on a smartphone, on a tablet, and also on a computer. The course takes about 2 hours, but can be completed at the learner's pace. A certificate is awarded when the course is completed. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Nestle Learning and the Cadet Academy, I'm delighted to announce the formal launch of the African Understanding Dyslexia Training Program, which will be available on the Cadet Academy website in the next few weeks at the cost of £25 equivalent per individual license per year. However, you can pre-order and pay only £20. Aren't we generous? £20 by visiting our page, which is www.cacademy. It will put right on the chat box right now. www.cacademy.sch.ng/dyslexia. Thank you so much, and over to the technical crew for the short video to have a glimpse of what the program would look like. Thank you once again.
Understanding dyslexia. 5 facts. Dyslexia was discovered more than 100 years ago, but many people still don't understand it. Dyslexia is very common. 1 in 5 people have dyslexia. Dyslexia is passed on through families. Dyslexia is neurological. It affects the way the brain processes written and spoken information. It is not caused by a physical problem with eyesight or hearing. It is much more than reading and spelling. Dyslexia also affects memory, sequencing, and organization. Dyslexia is different for everyone, so it is important to understand the difficulties. Processing speed, phonological awareness, working memory, executive function, and auditory processing. One person might have mild dyslexia, but another person could experience profound difficulties across multiple areas. A screening assessment could examine all the areas, but even children with mild dyslexia will need support. Ten myths about dyslexia. Many children with dyslexia are never identified, partly because there is a lot of misunderstanding about dyslexia. So, don't fall for one of these myths. Myth number 1. Dyslexia is identified by a low score on an intelligence test. It's a myth. You can still have dyslexia no matter how intelligent you are. Myth number 2. If you have dyslexia, you can't read. This is not true. A person with dyslexia can learn to read and spell, but sometimes their reading and writing may not reflect their true ability. Myth number 3. Dyslexics read and write backwards. This is a myth. Mirror writing is rare. However, sometimes people with dyslexia confuse the direction of similar looking letters. Myth number 4. You don't have dyslexia because the test report doesn't use the word. This is a myth. Dyslexia is a wide term. All these words can mean a person has dyslexia. They identify a specific part of the problem. Myth number 5. Dyslexia is caused by bad teaching. Studies into dyslexia have shown that it is both hereditary and neurological. Myth number 6. There is no evidence that dyslexia exists. This is not true. There is an overwhelming weight of research that proves dyslexia is a real physiological condition. Yet, because it is a hidden disability, some people still insist it does not exist. Myth number 7. A child will catch up later. When a child starts to fall behind, the most likely cause is dyslexia, and it needs to be addressed immediately. The worst thing you can do is delay in the hope that things will change. As they get older, the gap will widen, affecting confidence and self-esteem. Myth number 8. Vision therapy and colored overlays help dyslexia. This is a myth. Dyslexia is not a problem with the eyes. It is language-based. Colored overlays do not teach a child to read. Myth number 9. Dyslexia cannot be identified until the age of 8. This is a myth. A child with dyslexia will show signs as soon as they start school. Screening assessments can be used from the age of 5.5. Myth number 10. A child cannot read because they are lazy. This is a myth. Every child starts school wanting to learn. Children lose heart when the learning process fails. Never blame a child for their dyslexia. Dyslexia is a hidden disability that makes reading and spelling very difficult. Dyslexics have to work much harder to read, and the process makes them exhausted. Many people with dyslexia will learn to read and spell to a competent level, given an early start, time, and the correct teaching approach. However, the underlying causes will always be there and continue to affect areas such as memory and organization.
Okay, I need to unmute myself. So if you think that was an amazing video for the African community, please show by the raise of hands, please. I do. Put hands for me. Congratulations to the African teachers, parents, children, and everyone. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Cadet Academy. Really, this is a big one. With this, there's so much that I feel that every child that has this, or even parents, will begin to have information to know when to detect and not leave. And you talked about even the what happens, the video showed what happens when you try to teach the child how to read and spell, and then you forget the underlying factors, because sometimes we just keep reacting to the issues and then forget that the underlying issues are really there, which will still crop up in the future. So thank you so much to Nessie Learning and to the Cadet Academy for bringing up this wonderful initiative, an African thing for Africans. So thank you very much. This is so wonderful. All right, so we're gradually getting to the end of the program. I think 5 p.m. is our closing time, and we're not leaving 5:01. We'll leave just 5 on the dot. So we have another high point of this program, which is something that made this year's Global Inclusive Education Summer Camp very, very special. And that is going to be the presentation of awards of up to £1,500 and other loads of Nestle educational products for teachers and parent advocates in Africa. So I have another delectable lady who will be taking up this role, this responsibility of announcing the winners of this award. But then, please, if you're mentioned or your organization is mentioned and you're right here, please let's see you. Just make some noise or put some message so we are able to identify you. If we have any of the awardees online now, or your organization, the organization you're representing, please just drop a message on the chat box or maybe raise your hand so that we could be able to collate that. So I'll hand over to Blessing Inyampe, who is going to be taking us on this award ceremony. And that's for 5 minutes. You need 5 or 10 minutes blessing?
10, please. 10. We need
Okay,
lots
then.
of time to
All right.
celebrate.
Over to you.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to an exciting part of GIEBS Awards. I'm super excited. So quickly, because I have just 10 minutes, I wish I had more time, but let's get into it. So we have 4 categories. We have the Brown Heart Prize, we have the Brown Prize, we have the Gold Prize, and we have the Diamond Prize. So are we ready? Let's start with the category 4. So the category 4 is a Brown Heart Prize, and it is for a parent. And what are the criteria? This award is to be awarded to a parent of a child with special education needs who has made an outstanding contribution in advocating for their child and the special education community in one or more of the following ways. 1, raising public awareness about their child or children with special education needs or disability. 2, disseminating valuable information relating to special needs awareness on traditional media and social media. 3, planning and conducting parent training programs relating to social needs, awareness, and support. Providing support to school programs by organizing volunteers or providing direct in-school assistance, and then providing support to parents through participation in online or physical group meetings or other relevant community. And the prize for this is £500 in NESI dyslexia certificate training and free NESI reading license for 2 kids. Without further ado, our winner for the Brown House category for 2022 is Mrs. Aminat Abubakar. So if you're here, let us know, let us rejoice with her, Mrs. Aminat Abubakar. Congratulations, the Brown Heart Prize. While we celebrate, let's move already to the category 3, which is the Bronze Prize for Support Teacher. Now, this is to be awarded to an outstanding teaching aide or assistant who supports staff. This nominee is someone who has provided innovative and consistently outstanding support to students receiving special education services in their school and or their families, going above and beyond the requirements of their job description. And the price for this is £500 plus a NESI dyslexia certificate training. We had lots of nominees, but the judges have come to a conclusion. And the Bronze Prize for Support Teacher goes to Ididiong Daniel. Congratulations, Ididiong Daniel, the Bronze Prize for Support Teacher. If you're in here, make some noise and let us celebrate with you. Congratulations. While we celebrate, let us move to the category 2. And this category is a Gold Prize. It is the Gold Prize awarded to an outstanding educator. Includes special education and general education teachers, therapists, specialists, and related service providers. This nominee is someone who has provided innovative or consistently outstanding services to advance the success of inclusive special education for students receiving special education services above and beyond the requirements of their job description. The price for this is £500 cash, NESI dyslexia certificate training, and license to 1 NESI product. Now, the winner for the Gold Prize is Victoria Komolafe. I hope I got that correctly. Congratulations, Victoria Komolafe, the Gold Prize for Teacher. Congratulations. If you're in here, raise up your hands, make some noise in the chat, and let us celebrate with you. Congratulations. And finally, it's the Diamond Prize. Now, of course, we had lots of nominees for the Cadet Academy, but it's important we know that Cadet Academy, it's part of the organizers, so they can be, part of the nominees. But thank you. So After the Cadet Academy, the second school that we, the judges, looked into is what I'm going to announce. But before then, let's look at the criteria. This is the Diamond Prize for school. Criteria to be awarded to a school. The school nominated provides academic support and advocacy for students receiving special education, demonstrates leadership through the school's policy and practices, and creates a culture of inclusion, valuing, sharing, and celebrating special education within the school community. The prize for this school is a NESI Dyslexia Certificate, training for up to 10 teachers, and the school-wide license to 2 NESI products for up to 50 students. Wow! And the Diamond Prize for 2022 goes to Doveland International School. Congratulations to all the winners. Congratulations, congratulations. Let us celebrate with them. Let us celebrate with them. Congratulations. The Brown Hat Prize, the Bronze Prize, the Gold Prize, the Diamond Prize. Congratulations. And if you are among the first 100 people that registered, you also have some prizes, and the Cadet Academy will contact you. Thank you very much. Over to you now.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. that's congratulations to all the sorry, just a technical glitch. Okay, I think we're good. Almost. We're still within time. Okay, so we're back. So congratulations to all the awardees. Please, if you're here or you know anybody who has been mentioned, whose name has been mentioned, please do well to inform them so they could reach out to the Cadet Academy to claim their awards. This was a very transparent process, and we are so happy that some of the people that have been mentioned, we don't have access to them. We don't know them, so we're just making this presentation based on the poll that was, gathered throughout the process. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think oh yes, and then we had the panel of judges who worked tirelessly on this. So please, could you put your cameras on? I know that some people have their cameras off right now. The panel of judges, please, let's have your cameras on. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, thank you. All the panel of judges who worked on this. Yeah, technical team really wants to have your videos on at this time. So thank you very much for the job well done. Yes, these are all the people who worked on this, and we sincerely appreciate every effort, every time you put in to make this award session very transparent, very competitive, and putting a smile on this, the many people who have been awarded. You can imagine having access to NESI learning materials for 1 full year. That's really amazing. So please, let's put a round of, let's just give a clap really to Cadet Academy and NESI Learning. You can use the reactions down here if you really want, but I think this is a good one. Okay, so this is almost, my job here is almost over, but I want to sincerely thank Cadet Academy for giving me this opportunity once again to moderate today's program, today's session. I see myself as a disability advocate, not because I'm just a mom with 2 children on the autism spectrum, but because in the course of my work, this is all really what I do, disability inclusion. So every time I have the opportunity to give in my own expertise or my time to a course like this, I do not hesitate. So thank you very much, Cadet Academy, for having me yet again on this year's Global Inclusive Education Summer Camp. So I'll take my bow at this point, but before I go, I'll be handing over the floor to the Executive Director of the Cadet Academy, Ms. Dola Neke, for her vote of thanks. Thank you.
Amazing, mind-blowing. I need those words, please, in the chat box. Whatever your experience at being during the Global Inclusive Education Virtual Summer Camp. I need to see those words. And I've learned quite a lot. I'm so excited that I don't get to speak, I get to learn. And not only do I get to learn, I get to implement. Thank you to everyone. Thank you. I see awesome, amazing. Go on. I can see insightful. What else can I see? Oh, mind blowing. I'm so excited. Awesome. What can explain? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Mind blowing again. Wow. I've learned so much. Truly, this is impactful. Wow. Thank you so much for the feedback. I want to thank every one of you for being here again. You've been on this journey with us for the past 4 years. Yes, this is the third one. You've been amazing. You've just been so supportive and you've always been present. I want to thank the speakers. Some of them have been here right from the very first summer camp we had, the physical and even the virtual one. And I want to thank all our panelists. I want to thank the moderators. Some of them are steady. Last year, Ms. Didi was here. Ms. Basira, Susie, what could I say about you? Thank you for being a darling. Thank you for being an amazing, super excellent and committed MC. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you to my amazing team. I could never have done this alone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for putting your very best. Yes, there might have been a little bit of glitches here and there, but we all know that these things happen. And we're not going to just, we're going to ignore those and keep doing better. I want to say a very big thank you. And like I always say every year, please, it's not okay for us to come and learn. The best thing we can do to make a change, to make the world truly inclusive for exceptional learners would be to implement, advocate, and then begin to, and even acceptance, advocacy and acceptance and implementation. Congratulations to us all. I look forward to seeing you all next year. Thank you. And I would like to say this. I know this person would not admit this, but I want to say thank you to my husband for being super, super amazing. So the secret behind this is that the tech guy is actually Captain Uche, my very own captain. I want a very big thank you to you for always being there, for being supportive, for giving wings to fly. Thank you for believing in this dream. I appreciate you all. Have a blessed one, everybody. Bye-bye. Over to you, Susie.
Thank you very much. That does bring us to the end of this year's Global Inclusive Educational Virtual Summer Camp 2022. Congratulations to the recipients of the awards for celebrating parents, advocacy, and inclusive education in Africa. A very sincere thank you to our partner, Nessie Learning, and to our speakers and panelists, whom I will take a moment to shout out each and every one of you, because that's how much we really appreciate you. Professor Temple Grandin, animal behaviorist and animal scientist. Thank you to Mr. Jim Hogan, Vice President, Accessibility and in Technology at Google in the United States. To Professor Stephen Shore, professor at Adelphi University in New York, Professor Amanda Kirby, MBBS, MRCGP, and PhD Emeritus, Professor University of South Wales, Honorary Professor of Cardiff University, CEO and Co-IT Solutions in the UK. Thank you to Professor Ibrahim Umara, Professor of Political Science and International Relations, Head of Goni Umara Al-Majri School in Maiduguri. Professor Sigamoni Naker, Chief Director of Inclusive Education in the Western Cape Education Department. That's, of course, in Western Cape University. And thank you to Daisy Jonathan, the Director at Pleasant Places Schools and Pleasant Places Therapy Center in Nigeria. Princess Nwakego Ibrahim Pam, Founder and Executive Director at Petra Speech and Early Childhood Development Center. Thank you to Bolanle Adewole, Founder and Executive Director at the Learning Place Center. Jessica Grono, Special Education Teacher, Miss Wheelchair, Pennsylvania, US, as well as Razak Adekoya, Disability Activist, Program Development Advisor, West Africa. Thank you to Omar Sayaroni, Head of the Education Department at Ruma Disabilities, Pusat, Surabaya, Indonesia. Thank you to Patience Akande, SCI survivor, educator, and advocate for disability inclusion. To Bukola Ayinde, founder of Diary of Special Needs Mom Initiative. To Judy Msiza, founder and educator at Ardent Schools, Miles Autism Foundation, Uni and Learning Support Center in Kenya. Olaranjao Yusuf, coordinator at the Give Back Group, Latoya Tekoa, neurodevelopmental specialist, founder and owner of Behavior Genetics in Atlanta, Georgia, United States. Thank you to Charity Ibiabuki, inclusion advocate, founder and executive director at Inspired Inclusive Christian School in Lagos, as well as thank you to Anuo Luapo Akingbemelia, programs coordinator at Adara Foundation. Irene Bangwell, co-founder at the NOS N100 a Day Secondary School in Abuja, the technical committee, of course, Basirat Al-Shuaib, inclusive education specialist and founder at the Winford Center for Children and Women, Tobiloba Ajayi, founder of the Let Cerebral Palsy Kids Learn Foundation, to Edidiong Idang, self-discover coach, inclusion and gender expert. Thank you to Manobina Chakraborty, FRSA, inclusive education consultant and founder for Inclusion in India. And thank you to Susie Bolodioku, creative director, FOS Creative Studio and at Abba Center, Nigeria. Thank you to Blessing Ingyape, founder and CEO of Dyslexia Help Africa, Nigeria. To Duranji Kamfoze, CEO and founder at Dyslexia Malawi, Able Foundation in Malawi. Francis Mohi, program manager at Ike Foundation for Autism Nigeria. Jody Snowden, former specialist educator, dyslexia advocate at staff at NESI. And of course, we cannot forget to give special mention to Lola Aneki. Thank you so much. And to your husband, Mr. Uche, to all of our attendees, as well as to those who submitted great questions throughout the seminar. We really couldn't have done this without you. Thank you all for being a part of this year's Global Inclusive Educational Virtual Summer Camp 2022. I am truly so honored to be a part of this unique platform. My name is Susan Ilian. My heart is warmed by what we achieved over the past 3 days, and I look very much forward to meeting you all again next year. And until then, stay blessed.
The usual approach to teaching is you are told the process. which then has to be repeatedly practiced. This works for some, but those with memory difficulties are soon left behind. By 7 years old, these children have already given up. They believe they are no good at learning. Failing to learn and remember is not a matter of intelligence. There are clever children who are failing to keep up. Nessie has a different approach. Nessie learning does not rely on memory. It enhances and extends memory. Nessie develops the understanding of core concepts. Putting in more practice where there is no understanding does not help children who have fallen behind. It just reinforces their belief that they can't succeed. There needs to be a fundamental change. Children who have fallen behind can succeed once they realize that they don't have to remember everything. Whether it is reading, spelling, or arithmetic, they can all be worked out once the core concepts are understood. Nessie uses short, simple, animated strategies that lay the foundations of understanding. Research has proved that understanding the underlying concepts is more effective than memorization. So don't just learn, understand.
My name is Bibi Inkere, and I just concluded the 12-week online training in special needs, basic training on special needs education, organized by the Cadets Academy. It has been a life-transforming experience, really, because I kind of just stumbled into it. As a parent, all I needed to do all I was interested in is how I could manage my child better, understand her educational needs better. So I came across Mrs. Aneke, and it was like a roller coaster experience. She made special needs so easy. She kind of demystified it and encouraged. I saw her passion in getting people to know more about it, and I just keyed into it. So it has been like kind of one program, one course or the other with her, and accumulating in this, it's a huge achievement for me as a parent. And it has taken it beyond me managing my child to now thinking about extending this knowledge to other people. I happen to be the convener of the Engraced Ones Prayer Support and Advocacy Initiative. This is a support group for parents and children who live with special needs. So, and not just them passing on this information to other parents. Now we also have our educational arm called the School of Grace, in which this knowledge is really, really used. I want to appreciate Mrs. Aneke for bringing out this in me. Thank you, and I really recommend this course for as many people